Here's the thing. I'm not famous, not in the least. I'm just a girl making videos. I'm just here to document my life, document what I'm doing, what I'm learning, and hopefully along the way inspire somebody and share what I've learned in a way that can make their life a little bit better. And again, like I said, I am not famous. So when I first started making TikTok videos, I was kind of shocked by how many people would find it fun to leave hate comments on just a random girl's TikTok page right off the bat. I was shocked. And in the beginning, I was pretty bothered by it. I didn't know what to do with it. I wasn't really sure how to handle it, or if it meant that I was making videos that were bad, or if I should just stop making videos. And I know this sounds really dramatic because, again, I don't have very many followers. I'm not a famous person. I just started doing this because I wanted to, not because I'm looking for fame or looking for affirmation from people. What I have noticed is that most of the hate comments that I get, people that don't really understand what I do. And I think there's a difference between not understanding what someone does and leaving a mean comment, but a lot of these people kind of do both. I very rarely get questions from people wanting to know more about what it is that I do. I mostly just get comments that clearly show that they don't understand what I do, but they use hateful language or say discouraging things, and I can't fault them for it that much because they just don't know. Personally, I can't imagine even having the time to go out of my way to comment something mean on somebody else's post. Like, why would I do that? Why would I? No. But for this video, I thought it would be kind of fun to go through some of the ones that I've gotten, mostly on TikTok over the last few months, read through them, show you the video, give you the context behind it, and then react to it and explain my thoughts on their comment. And then, like I said, most of the comments I get that are hate comments are because people just don't understand what I do. So I'll react to it and then give my side and hopefully help it make a little bit more sense. For those of you that have never seen me before, first of all, I'm glad you're here. Second of all, hi, my name is Lauren. I am a senior in college. I am a psychology major with a minor in piano, and I'm currently in the process of applying to PhD programs in gifted psychology. And in my field of gifted, and I think my field of either psychology or gifted psychology specifically is what trips a lot of people up, because a lot of people have hurt around gifted programs, or they feel like gifted programs are just a way to make certain kids think that they're better than others. And in reality, that's not what it is at all. So let's just dive right in. And as I go through these comments, I'll explain a little bit about what I do, and you can just see my reaction to some of these hate comments. And disclaimer, I am going to blur out names, faces, anything like that of these people. Some of these, the platform has restricted, so if you were to go on my page, you can't even see them. Some of them you could find, but if for some reason you're watching this, and again, I'm not famous, so it's not like I'm gonna have people running back and forth between my social media pages. But if you do see this video and you see somebody makes a hate comment, please just leave them alone. You know, don't go comment something mean just because they said something mean to me. Number one, I'm a big girl, I can handle myself. Number two, it doesn't get anybody anywhere to fight meanness with meanness. So that being said, I'm gonna pull these up. Let's get right into it. To start with, we're going to go to the first set of hate comments I ever received. This person left several comments on a few of my videos all at once. I remember opening the app to all these notifications, and at first I was like, wait a second, is a video like blowing up right now? What's going on? No, it was just one person. They left a lot of comments. They had a lot to say, and that's okay. Everyone's allowed to have their opinion, but I'm going to read this off so you can see what they said.
What's your dream job? What do you want to do when you grow up?
I'm gonna be a doctor.
Yeah. How much do you want to make?
I'm gonna make people feel okay.
So the first comment, why do you act like your struggles are more important than the special ed kids? That's what I never understand about you guys. And then, why so-called gifted kids take attention and resources and funding from the special ed kids who really need it? Okay, so you are super smart. You need to stop thinking that you're better than everyone else and making the specialized kids and gen ed kids feel bad because they don't learn things as fast as you do. No one cares that you are smart or whatever. Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. Even just reading this back again makes me sad because I know that this person probably didn't have a good experience in their education. And that's a sad thing in and of itself because I think there are so many things about schools and the education system that could be improved upon. And I know a lot of people have had really negative experiences, and negative experiences are part of life, but that's partly why I'm in this field. I don't have experience in all areas of special education, but gifted education is a part of special education. It is not for the purpose of making kids feel like they are better or worse than anybody else. It's not for the purpose of isolating anybody or making them feel like they're less than. And if that's what a gifted program is doing, then it should probably be evaluated so that the teachers can figure out what's broken and what needs to be fixed. Giftedness is considered in the special education category because giftedness requires different specialization and a different skill set from teachers, and gifted kids have different needs than a lot of their peers in the classroom. So we have gifted programs to help meet some of those needs because they need additional help in certain areas. And giftedness is not the same thing as being smart. That definitely can go along with it, but not all gifted students are going to make good grades in school. And not all kids that make good grades in school are gifted. There's a whole lot more to it than just your grades or how smart you are. And that additional piece is why these programs are so important. I made a lot of TikTok videos about this, but I'll just quickly run through some reasons of why I think they're important. So number one, a lot of gifted kids do learn at a different rate from other kids in the classroom. And for some teachers, I know I was in this situation where a lot of my teachers expected me to help the other kids in the classroom when I was done with my work, and they expected me to act as a second teacher to them. But let me explain why that's not really fair. Number one, all students are there to learn. No student's learning is more or less important than another student's learning, and it's not fair to ask another student to fulfill the role of a teacher. I get that classrooms are challenging and that it's hard to meet the needs of so many students at once, but that's where gifted programs come in. Number two, I often felt socially isolated from my peers, and a lot of gifted students feel like this. You can look up so many research studies that say this because gifted programs are thinking differently than their peers, they're functioning differently than their peers. A lot of the time, they're more emotionally or socially sensitive, and so they might be bothered by things that other kids aren't. And then also think about it like this. If you're sitting in class and your teacher sends another student over to help you, and that student is always the student that's teaching you how to do things, that creates a really weird social dynamic. Like, you're probably not going to want to play with that kid at recess or sit with them at lunch, because then you just feel like this kid thinks you're stupid. And that kid probably doesn't actually think that, but you've been put in a really awkward position. So it can be hard for gifted kids to make friends. And then not just all of that, but there's also a component called asynchronous development. And it's a big word, but basically what it means is that in a gifted person's brain, their brain is developing at drastically different rates in different places. So somebody may be really, really smart or really, really talented at one specific skill. They may be able to talk about it for hours and go on and on and on about it. But then they may be completely socially incompetent, or they may be amazing at English and awful at math. They may talk on and on and on for hours about this really niche subject, but then have a hard time reading out loud in front of their classmates. There are a million different ways that asynchronous development can appear in somebody, but that is a really big reason why gifted programs are so important. Because if you have one kid that functions as like a 50-year-old but a 5-year-old at the same time, but their actual physical age of them and all of their classmates is 15 years old, they need help developing the parts that they're weaker in so that they're not functioning as a 5-year-old in certain areas. But then they're also going to feel socially isolated because in certain ways, they are functioning different than their peers, and they might function ahead of their peers in certain places. And everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. And again, that doesn't make anybody better or worse than anybody else. But a gifted person's strengths and weaknesses are often very drastic from each other. So grouping them together, make sure that they get teachers that understand them, they're grouped with people that are like them, so they're able to form better friendships. And then the goal is that they're taught how to develop their strengths and weaknesses so that they can kind of integrate back into the social scene with everybody else, integrate into a future job, into college, things like that, into a future job, into college, even learn how to function better as a leader or as a family unit or as a partner. And so gifted programs are really important in helping with all of those things. Here's the original video for context.
Immediately no. I'm telling you right now, I seen what I needed to see.
And now for the comment. Somebody else was commenting on this video and ranting about how their school didn't have a gifted program. So she was expressing her frustrations over that. And then somebody responded with a hate comment and said, no one cares that you're gifted. You didn't have it worse. No one cares. Gifted kids programs take the funding that should be going towards special ed programs because they already get some. The grammar is a little mixed up here, but I think the gist of this comment is nobody cares that you're gifted. You don't have it worse. Gifted kids are stealing funding away from other special ed programs, and they don't deserve anything because they're already smart. So why do they need so much extra help? I kind of already explained the answer to this in my last question, but I'll talk a little bit more about funding. Funding is a big issue for a lot of schools, and different states do it differently. In my state, funding is based off of school attendance. Some states base it off of grades, and other states have completely different systems. So funding does come from a lot of different places, but I think what a lot of people get worried about is how funding is distributed throughout the district. So also what money is allowed to be spent where. You know, does the district need new classroom supplies? Do we need to hire a new teacher to teach a subject? Do we need to make sure we have a good gifted program? What about the other special ed kids? These are all questions that people deal with when talking about funding. In school districts, there's usually a financial team that makes the funding. A lot of the time the school board has input and the superintendent oversees a lot of the budget for the school year. And ideally that superintendent is listening to the citizens of whatever area, to the people that attend the school, while also making sure to follow state laws and federal laws and meeting the needs that some people may not recognize. It's difficult because the people making decisions have to balance a lot of different priorities, and each person is going to have a unique set of priorities, and those are not always going to match up even within the same town. So when it comes to making funding decisions, it is very hard to keep everybody happy. But like I said, gifted programs are classified as a part of special education, and there is one single federal law supporting the education of gifted students. It encourages that schools should provide enriched learning opportunities for their gifted students and include social and emotional support. So there is that one federal law that says that schools should have something to offer their gifted students, even if they're not able to instate a formal gifted program. And then individual states often have more laws with more regulations and rules about what is allowed, the minimum that schools should be providing to their students. And this is the case for all areas of education, not just gifted education. There are laws for all kinds of things to make sure that the right people are getting the right help and support that they need, and gifted students are just one category of those people. So a lot of it is just a balancing act of figuring out what the federal government requires of schools, what the state government requires of schools, and then between individual districts, looking at the needs of the people in that district and figuring out the best way to meet those needs. So there's a lot of complex decision making going on and a lot of following the law that has to happen, or else there goes all the funding. So gifted kids aren't taking the funding away. Funding has to be allocated in certain ways in order to follow the law and in order to ensure that all the students are getting the support that they need. Because if you serve just one category of students, or if you try to give the same thing to everybody, not everybody's going to have their needs met, and then nobody's happy. Okay, this one's kind of funny. Here's the video.
The gardeners have planted white roses when I specifically asked for red.
You could always paint the roses red.
What an odd thing to say.
Someone says, from my understanding, the labels gifted and retarded are equal in impact on childhood development. Children are children and don't need labels like this. Congrats on your job though. And then they have a little eye roll emoji. Thanks so much. I am so excited about my future job. I am going to help so many people and hopefully be able to put so many resources out there that make an impact on people and connect with a lot of people. So I'm excited. It's gonna be the best. Okay, but let's talk about the labels. I made a video responding to this person, and here's the thing. The term gifted is not the same thing as that other word that the person used. And I'm not going to say the word again because it holds a lot of negative connotation for a lot of people. It is a word that is most often used as an insult. It is not a word used to describe the needs that someone has in education. It is not a technical term, and a lot of people would probably be really hurt if you called them that word. It is not a label that a lot of people want to claim, and it is not the same thing as calling somebody gifted. To be considered gifted, you have to go through a rigorous diagnostic process. This can involve taking an IQ test. It can involve interviews with parents and teachers to determine how you are functioning in comparison to other people your same age. It can include a portfolio of your academic records, and you do have to go through, and at most schools, you do have to go through some form of an official diagnostic process in order to even be labeled as gifted. That is not even close to the same thing as calling somebody that other word. But I do think there is merit to this person's idea. Children are just children. Putting labels on them doesn't necessarily help things. You don't want to make a kid feel different than their peers, but I do think for gifted kids, they already do feel different. But a lot of gifted kids already do feel different. I'm a gifted adult and I still feel different. And I think that's part of what makes us all human. We all have differences about us, whether that's what we look like or what our interests are or what we're good at. Just because I'm gifted doesn't mean that I am good at everything. There are plenty of things that I am very bad at. And there are plenty of people out there not diagnosed as gifted that are smarter than me in those areas. If we wiped away all our differences, we would all look the same and all be the same and sound the same. And personally, that sounds boring. And this part is just my personal take, but I do think with kids, they don't always notice differences between them and somebody else, but kids do pick up on a lot more than you think that they do. And so it's a lot healthier to teach them how to navigate differences and communicate about differences and learn about differences in a positive way than it is to just shove it aside and pretend that differences don't exist, because they do, and that's normal. But at the same time, I am not saying that you should broadcast it that somebody is gifted, because again, that can make all of the social stigmas and social isolation a lot worse, because you can see just from me reading off these comments how little is actually known to the general public about it, and so a lot of things can be easily misconstrued. And so if your child was gifted, for example, I would be careful about the language that you use to explain to them why they're going to a different room to learn apart from all the other kids in the class, or why they might have a harder time connecting with people their age. It doesn't need to be phrased in such a way that makes them think that they're better than the other kids, and it can instead be phrased in a way that helps them learn about themselves and focus more on that than on any social implications. I also personally wouldn't tell my kids their IQ. I still don't know my IQ, and I'm completely fine with that. Kids are kids, and so kids sometimes like to tell kids things that they shouldn't. Sometimes parents will talk about things that they shouldn't, and you don't want to create any unnecessary tension. And it's also hard to quantify intelligence as just a number. That's partly why schools are shifting away from using just IQ to incorporating those things like the interviews and the portfolios. Because IQ tests, while they are effective in some ways, aren't the only way to tell if somebody is gifted. Additionally, special education and gifted education are classified under the same big umbrella, but sometimes the regulations for what most people think of as special education have more regulation than those that are gifted. So there are privacy laws for most forms of special education that aren't in place in all states for gifted people. But similarly to how you wouldn't address somebody's personal healthcare information, it isn't always the most tactful thing to be discussing grades or specific measures of intelligence. So I would say read the room, think about when it's appropriate to talk about these things, when it's not. And I think a lot of this, like I was saying about the differences, because we are all different, happens on an individual person-to-person basis. What one person needs is not going to be the same thing as the next person. That is normal and okay. All right, next I made this video.
The gardeners have planted white roses when I specifically asked for red.
You could always paint the roses red.
What an odd thing to say.
Honestly, I was expecting to get hate for this video. I phrased it in such a way that was a tiny bit rage bait. I didn't want to make people mad, I didn't want to hurt people, but I did want to say something bold that would raise some questions so that I would have an opportunity to explain. So one person said, gifted program as an elementary school. Is this a joke? So I responded and said, well yeah, the video itself is a joke. A lot of my content I try to keep funny and lighthearted because humor is what resonates with people. But that did bring to light a misconception that a lot of people have. A lot of people probably think that gifted programs are just an elementary school thing, and so I can understand why it seems weird that a grown woman is still talking about something that happened in elementary school. But I just politely explained to them mine lasted through high school. A lot of gifted programs do, and it helped me a lot, so it influenced my choice in career and just a lot as a person. What I didn't go into in that comment is that giftedness is not just something that goes away once you graduate your elementary gifted program or graduate from high school. It is something that does leave a lasting impact on a person for life, because it has to do with how that person's brain is functioning and structured and the way that they're interacting with the things around them, taking in, consuming, processing information. So it's not just an elementary school kind of thing. And then again, on the same video, this one surprised me a little bit because a lot of comments I receive are affirming, and they're from people that have been in gifted programs or know someone who was, and talk about how wonderful they were and what a great impact that it had on them. And this person said that not enough of the population understands that gifted programs are special education programs and that they can be really harmful to some students. So first, I affirmed what they were saying because I did agree with that part about how a lot of people don't realize that they are special education. However, it sounded like maybe this person had a negative experience, so I asked them if they were comfortable sharing and that I'd be happy to hear their thoughts on why they did not think that they were positive. I have heard very few bad things from people involved in gifted programming, so it is a little bit surprising to me when somebody says that they are harmful, and this person sounded like they knew a little bit about them, which is why I kind of made the assumption that they did have some sort of experience. And not every experience anywhere is going to be good. Again, one thing that's just a part of life. But my hope in my response was that I could invite them to continue contributing to the conversation, because I do want to hear about people's experiences and learn about why they had a good experience or why they had a bad experience and what made it bad for them. Because if I can learn about that from people, then I have more information and I'm better equipped to go on and enter the field that I'm interested in and do what I need to do. Okay, Okay, this next one was interesting, and I wouldn't categorize it so much as a hate comment, just as someone who disagreed with what I was saying, but I'll play the video for you and then we'll chat about it. So this person said, standardizing education from the beginning would make everything easier for everyone. XOXO, a future teacher who's scared to have to deal with 20 different academic levels. And then she responded to her own comment and said, I do get the point of gifted kids is to make things easier for kids who need acceleration, but life just isn't that way and they need to learn standardization. See, here's the thing. I don't think life is standard or fair. No one's experience in life is ever going to be the same as anyone else's. And I think a lot of people could tell you that firsthand. When you become a teacher, you're going to have all kinds of kids in your classroom. You're going to have kids whose parents are happily married. They have 2 siblings and a dog. And then you're going to have kids whose parents are divorced. You're going to have kids whose parents have passed away. You're going to have kids who are in the foster system. You're going to have kids whose parents are on drugs. You're going to have kids from all kinds of different racial backgrounds and cultural experiences. And some of these kids will be very aware of their culture and some will not. You will have kids in your classroom whose families qualify for free and reduced lunch because they're struggling to pay the bills on time. And you will have students in your classroom whose family owns multiple homes and takes vacations abroad multiple times a year. Life isn't standard. We're all born into different circumstances, and if you have one standard in the classroom, then that means you are asking kids of all these different circumstances to adhere to that standard. So I think having one standard for everyone isn't realistic because people aren't coming to the table showing up as the same person. We have all kinds of different things happening, and that is the challenge of education. I think this person is totally valid in their fear, and I feel for them. I don't want to be a teacher, and this is one of the many reasons why. I think it would be so hard to teach to so many kids and try to meet all of their needs and know that I can't meet all of their needs 100% of the time. It's a hard job, but life isn't standardized. There isn't a standard for life. And so I think that the job of a teacher is to make education the best experience it can be for as many kids as possible and to meet the needs of as many of the unique minds in the classroom as possible. And that takes creativity, it takes thinking outside the box, it takes problem solving. And like I said, you won't be able to do it 100% of the time. And that's partly why we have extra programs to help you out. Special education and or gifted education are there so that one teacher doesn't have to do it all by themselves. So there's my hate comments. I've definitely grown thicker skin from people leaving comments like this on my page, and I've kind of learned to just expect it because I even said it in this video. Not everyone is going to agree with everyone else. We're all different. We have different experiences, different beliefs. And so it doesn't make sense that somebody would agree with me. But based off of my own experience, based off of scientific research, based off of the experiences I've heard from people that I have met, and from the stories that a lot of you have shared in my comments, I know that this is the right career for me and that there is a need for somebody in this field. I'm excited for my job that I will have one day. I'm excited for all the people I'm going to get to meet. And comments like this are not going to stop me from going out and doing it. And for every comment, like one of the ones you just saw, for each one of those, there's at least 5 more from one of you saying how happy you are to see my videos, how you don't want me to stop making them, how much of a positive impact your gifted program had, what a hard time you had in school because you didn't have a gifted program. I've heard so many experiences from all of you out there, and I'm so happy that so many people are sharing and that my content is resonating with so many of you. I know my content isn't for everybody, but I do know that it is finding the right people. So if you watch this video, thank you for making it this far. Feel free to ask me questions in the comments, share your experiences down below. I love getting to hear from all of you, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm sticking around. So if you want to follow along on my journey as I go through the PhD application process and hopefully grad school, then make sure you subscribe, and I will see you next time.